Okay, so picture this. It's Thursday. You just got paid. You open your banking app. Maybe you even do that little ritual where you take a deep breath before you tap on the balance, like you're bracing for bad news. And you see the number. And for like 2 seconds, it feels good. There's money in the account. Real money. You think, okay, this is fine. This is okay. I'm going to be responsible this time. And then you spend the next 72 hours watching it evaporate. Rent, gone. Car payment, gone. Groceries, gas, that one subscription you keep forgetting to cancel. A dinner out because honestly, you deserved it. A quick Amazon purchase that felt totally justified at the time. And suddenly, it's Sunday night, and you're looking at your account again, and it's like, where did it go? You worked 40 hours this week. You make $30 an hour. That's $1,200 before taxes. After taxes, maybe $850, $900. And somehow, at the end of the week, you feel like you have nothing to show for it. And this is the part that really messes with your head. You're not being irresponsible. You're not blowing money on luxury vacations or designer clothes. You're just living. And still, it feels like you're running on a treadmill that's set just slightly faster than your legs can go. My name is Sam, and I've been obsessed with this problem for years. The gap between what people earn and what they actually keep. Between how hard someone works and how much financial progress they actually make. I think about money not just as numbers, but as a system, as a set of rules that most of us were never explicitly taught. And once you start to see those rules clearly, a lot of things that felt like personal failures start to look a lot more like structural traps. So today I want to talk about something that I think is genuinely one of the most important things you can understand about modern work and modern money. It's this. Your $30 an hour job doesn't actually pay you $30 an hour. In real terms, in terms of what that hour of your time actually buys you, it might be paying you something closer to $4 or $5. And I don't mean that in a vague, motivational poster kind of way. I mean it in a very concrete, traceable, mathematical kind of way. And once we walk through it together, I think you're going to look at your paycheck, and honestly, your whole relationship with work, very differently. The first cut. Taxes aren't what you think they are. Let's start with the most obvious one, because even though everyone knows taxes exist, most people seriously underestimate how much they're actually paying. Say you make $30 an hour and you work full-time, 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. That's $60,000 a year in gross income. Sounds solid. In a lot of parts of the world, that's a genuinely decent salary. But here's the thing. Your effective tax rate isn't just federal income tax. People always forget about state income tax, which, depending on where you live, could be anywhere from 0 to over 13%. Then there's FICA, Social Security and Medicare, which takes another 7.65% right off the top. And that's on every dollar you earn, not just above some threshold. When you add it all up, the average American worker in that $60,000 range is losing somewhere between 25 and 35% of their gross income to various forms of taxation before they ever see a dime. So right away, your $30 hour is really more like a $20 to $22 hour. You've lost $8 to $10 before you've done anything at all. And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you taxes are evil or do a whole anti-government rant, because honestly, that's not the point. The point is just that most people mentally budget against their gross income, not their net income, and that gap in your head, between what you think you earn and what you actually receive, is the first place the illusion breaks down. The second cut, the cost of getting to work. Now, here's one that people almost never factor in, and it genuinely shocks people when they do the math. How much does it cost you to go to work? I'm talking gas or transit. Car maintenance and depreciation, because every mile you drive to your job is a mile off the life of your car. Parking, if you pay for it. Work clothes, not just the initial purchase, but dry cleaning, replacements, all of it. Maybe you grab a coffee on the way in, or lunch a few days a week, because you don't have time to pack one. All of this is, in a very real sense, a cost of employment. It's money you spend because you work, money that vanishes directly into the act of having a job. There's this economist named Gary Betts. Actually, wait, the guy I'm thinking of is Joe Dominguez, who wrote this book called Your Money or Your Life back in the 90s, and it was one of those books that genuinely rearranged how I think about time and money. His whole argument was that you should calculate your real hourly wage by taking your take-home pay, subtracting all the money you spend as a result of working, and then dividing it by not just the hours you're at work, but all the hours work consumes, including your commute, your decompression time, your work prep, all of it. And when people actually do this exercise, the results are humbling. Someone commuting 45 minutes each way, spending $150 a month on gas and wear on their car, another $80 on work lunches, $60 on work clothes, that's close to $300 a month in direct work costs. Spread that across your working hours, and you've just shaved another $1.50, $2 off your real hourly rate. We're now somewhere around $18 or $19 in real terms for what started as a $30 an hour job. The third cut, the time tax nobody talks about. Okay, so the math above is just money in and money out. But there's another dimension to this that's even more interesting, and it's about time. Here's a question. How many hours a week does your $30 job actually take from your life? Most people say 40 hours. But think about it honestly. You commute, let's say conservatively 30 minutes each way, 5 days a week. That's 5 hours of commuting. You spend time getting ready for work, shower, getting dressed, coffee before you leave. Let's say 30 minutes in the morning. That's another 2.5 hours. After work, most people need some kind of decompression time. You don't just clock out and immediately become a fully functional, present human being. You need an hour to unwind, zone out, transition back to your personal life. That's another 5 hours. We're already at 52.5 hours that work consumes, and we haven't even talked about things like the mental load of your job, the emails you check on your phone after hours, the work anxiety that bleeds into your Sunday evenings, the fact that you're mentally half at work even when you're physically home. And now, here's where it gets philosophical in a really uncomfortable way. If your job takes 52 hours from your week, not 40, but 52, and you're taking home, say, $850 after taxes, and you subtract $300 in work-related costs, you're actually keeping $550. Divide that by 52 hours, and your real hourly rate is around $10.50. That's not even minimum wage in some states. Now do it again, but include that mental load, the Sunday dread, the fact that your most productive and energetic hours of the day belong to your employer, and you get the leftovers, and the number starts looking even smaller. This is what I mean when I say $4 or $5. Obviously, it varies person to person, job to job. But the point isn't the exact figure. The point is that there's a massive, almost embarrassing gap between the number on your offer letter and the real value of what you're exchanging your time for. The fourth cut. Lifestyle inflation and the sneaky way wages disappear. So now here's where it gets really interesting. Because even if we stopped here, even if taxes and work costs and time were the whole story, that would be enough to explain why so many people feel broke on decent incomes. But there's another layer, lifestyle inflation. This is the phenomenon where your spending tends to rise to meet your income, almost automatically, almost unconsciously. You get a raise, and within 6 months you have a slightly nicer apartment, a slightly newer car, slightly more expensive habits. You're earning more, but you're not keeping more. Your financial life expands like a gas to fill whatever container you put it in. And here's the subtle, insidious part. A lot of lifestyle inflation isn't even about luxury. It's about survival in a system that charges more for everything the moment you can technically afford it. Think about it. When your income rises, you often move to a better neighborhood, not because you're being extravagant, but because the affordable neighborhoods have gotten worse, or less safe, or the schools have gotten bad. Your car gets more expensive not because you want a fancy car, but because the cheap car kept breaking down and costing you money. Your food gets more expensive because you're working longer hours and you don't have time to cook everything from scratch anymore. There's a term economists use called the poverty premium, the idea that being poor is actually more expensive than being wealthy because you can't afford to buy in bulk, can't afford the upfront cost of efficiency, pay more for credit because your score is lower. And lifestyle inflation is almost the mirror image of that, a middle income premium where every step up the income ladder comes with new, expected expenses that quietly eat the difference. So even if you got a raise last year, a real, meaningful raise, a significant portion of that extra income probably just went into maintaining a slightly more expensive version of your existing life. The fifth cut: what you're not building while you work. I want to shift gears here because I think there's a dimension to this conversation that gets overlooked, and it's the most important one. When you trade your time for money, when you work a job, any job, you are doing something specific. You are converting your hours into a fixed rate of exchange. $30 an hour means $30 an hour. If you work, you get paid. If you stop working, you stop getting paid. The exchange is direct, linear, and it has a ceiling. The ceiling is you. There are only so many hours in a week you can work. You have a body that gets tired, a mind that needs rest, a life that demands presence. Even if you hustle and work 60 hours a week, you've capped yourself. Your income has a hard limit built into its very structure. And the reason this matters so much is that while you're spending 40, 50, 60 hours a week trading your time for money, you are not building anything that generates money without your time. You're not building equity. You're not building skills that compound. You're not building systems or businesses or investment portfolios because, and here's the brutal math, you literally do not have the time or the energy. The job consumes both. This is what I think is the deepest and most uncomfortable part of the work scam, as I'd call it. It's not just that wages are low relative to what you produce. It's that the structure of employment actively prevents most people from doing the things that would make them financially free because it takes so much of their most limited resource, their time, that by the time they clock out, they're running on empty. The sixth cut: you are worth more than you're paid. Okay, so I want to be careful here because I don't want this to just be a rant or a capitalism bad kind of video, because honestly, that's not particularly useful. But I do think it's important to understand something about how wages work. Your wage is not determined by how hard you work or how much value you create. It's determined by the labor market, which is to say, by supply and demand for your particular skill set, in your particular geography, at this particular moment in time. Now, there's a concept in economics called surplus value. It's actually a very old idea, goes back to Marx. And I know that's a word that makes some people nervous, but just stick with me for a second, because the math is genuinely interesting regardless of your politics. The basic idea is this: when you work for a company, you produce more value than you receive in wages. That gap between what you produce and what you're paid is captured by the company as profit. That's not a conspiracy theory or political commentary. It's literally how business works. A company hires you because you're worth more to them than you cost. If you weren't, they wouldn't hire you. For a knowledge worker making $60,000 a year, it's estimated they generate somewhere between 3 to 10 times their salary in value for their employer, depending on the industry. A software engineer making $120,000 might generate $500,000 in annual value for their company. A sales rep making $50,000 might generate $500,000 in revenue. Is that exploitative? I mean, that's a philosophical question, and people have different answers. But what it means practically is that there is almost always a gap, often a large one, between what you earn and what you contribute. And understanding that gap is the first step toward doing something about it. What you can actually do about this. All right, so we've painted a pretty gloomy picture. Real wages, after taxes and costs and time, are a fraction of the headline number. Lifestyle inflation eats most of what's left. Employment structure prevents wealth building. You're generating more value than you receive. So now what? I want to be honest with you here. There's no magic fix. Anyone who tells you that one weird trick or one online course is going to transform your financial life is selling you something. Real change takes time, intention, and usually some discomfort. But there are real, concrete moves that shift the math in your favor. The first is to actually calculate your real hourly wage. Do the exercise. Sit down and figure out what you actually take home, what you spend because of work, and how many hours work really takes from your life. Most people find the number humbling. But humbling is useful. Humbling means you stop mentally accounting based on a fiction and start making decisions based on reality. The second is to start separating your income from your time. I know that sounds abstract, so let me make it concrete. This doesn't have to mean starting a business or becoming a YouTuber or any of that. It can mean investing, even small amounts, in index funds that grow without your active participation. It can mean developing a skill you can sell freelance, so you have some income that isn't tied to a single employer's hourly rate. It can mean building something small on the side, a product, a service, a piece of content that earns something while you sleep. The goal isn't to get rich quick. The goal is to slowly reduce the percentage of your income that requires your direct time to produce. Even getting that to 90% time dependent instead of 100% time dependent is meaningful progress. The third is to be ruthlessly strategic about where you spend your work energy. If your real hourly rate is $10, that changes the math on a lot of things. Should you do your own taxes? Probably yes. Should you negotiate your salary aggressively? Absolutely yes, because the ROI on a 2-hour conversation that gets you a $5,000 raise is insane compared to almost any other use of 2 hours. Should you be investing in skills that increase your market value? Yes, and quickly, because your earning potential is the single largest asset most people have, and most people do almost nothing to actively grow it. The fourth is to understand and fight lifestyle inflation consciously. I'm not saying live like a monk. I'm saying make intentional decisions about which upgrades to your life actually make you happier and which ones are just the automatic, socially expected expansion of your lifestyle that comes with income growth. The people who build real wealth aren't always the highest earners. They're often the people who kept their lifestyle costs flat while their income grew and invested the difference. The bigger picture. What work is actually selling you? I want to zoom out for a second and say something that I think is actually the most important point in all of this. The narrative around work in our culture is deeply, almost religiously, attached to a set of ideas that don't fully hold up under scrutiny. The idea that hard work is always rewarded, that earning more means you're doing better, that your job is a fair exchange, that if you're not getting ahead financially, it's because you're not working hard enough. And these ideas are not entirely wrong. Work ethic matters. Skills matter. Showing up consistently matters. But they're incomplete in a way that makes them almost misleading because they locate financial struggle entirely within the individual, as a failure of discipline or effort, when a huge amount of it is structural. The system is designed to make you a consumer and an employee, not because there's some shadowy cabal orchestrating it, but because consumers buy things and employees produce things, and both of those behaviors are economically productive for the people who own the means of production. The incentives of the system push you toward spending your earnings and selling your time. The incentives do not push you toward building assets and buying time back. And you can operate within that system your whole life, work incredibly hard, and never build real financial security. Not because you failed, but because you played by a set of rules that weren't designed with your long-term freedom in mind. Seeing that clearly is not depressing. I want to be really clear about that. Seeing the rules of the game clearly is the only way to play better. You can't change what you can't see. One more thing before I let you go. I want to tell you something that I genuinely believe, and it's this. Most people who feel financially stuck are not bad with money. They're not lazy. They're not irresponsible. They are doing exactly what the system expects them to do. Working hard, spending their earnings, and trusting that the math will eventually work out in their favor. And for a lot of people, it never does. Not because they didn't try, but because no one ever showed them clearly what the actual math looks like. No one sat down with them and said, "Look, here's what $30 an hour actually nets you in real life. Here's where it goes. Here's why it feels like you're running in place, even though you're working your hardest." That's what I wanted to do today. Not to make you angry, not to make you feel cheated, though honestly, some of these numbers are a little maddening, but to give you a clearer picture of the game you're playing. Because once you see it clearly, you can start making different choices. Not perfect choices, not dramatic overnight transformations, but small, deliberate shifts in how you think about your time, your income, your spending, and your future. And those small shifts, compounded over years, are how ordinary people build extraordinary financial lives. So let me leave you with this. The next time you look at your paycheck and feel that familiar, quiet confusion, where did it all go? I hope you have a better answer. Not a comforting one necessarily, but a true one. Taxes took a chunk. Work costs took more. Time converted your 40 hours into 52. Lifestyle inflation absorbed whatever was left. And underneath all of it, a system that makes more money when you spend than when you save quietly shaped every one of those outcomes. That's the real picture. That's why your $30 hour might be functionally worth 4 or 5 by the time it reaches your actual life. But here's the flip side of that, and this is important. Every one of those cuts is a place where you have some degree of leverage. You can reduce work costs. You can protect against lifestyle inflation. You can buy back time by building income streams that don't require your direct hours. You can invest the gap between your lifestyle cost and your income and let compounding do work that your body never could. None of it is easy. I won't pretend it is. But all of it is learnable. All of it is doable. And the most important step is always the same one: seeing clearly. I hope today helped with that. If this video gave you something to think about, I'd really appreciate a like or a share. It genuinely helps more people find this kind of content. And if you want to go deeper on any of these ideas, I've got more videos on real wages, investing, and building financial independence that I think you'll find useful. I'll see you in the next one.